Hey, it's Sergio Gonzalez with SG Associates, and welcome back to the 805 Live podcast, where we pull back the curtain on all things real estate here in the 805 and beyond. And today I'm super excited. I have a good friend, neighbor, and professional colleague, Brian Moreno from Moreno Law here in Westlake Village.
Yes.
And today we're going to be talking about HOAs.
Yes.
Which is your specialty.
Yes.
Okay. And so, Brian, tell us a little bit just quickly about your background, your practice, and then we'll kind of dive in and share a little bit about, some of the insight that you can give to our listeners and viewers here around HOAs, because I feel like there's a lot of myths and truths around HOAs.
Yeah, absolutely. And thanks for having me. I really appreciate it. So I've been part of the common interest development industry for the last 20 years. I've practiced community association law during that time, where I represent homeowner associations almost exclusively, on a broad range. I address litigation issues, corporate issues, pretty much any issue that an HOA will confront. I provide legal advice and counsel on the particular issue that they're dealing with. So I deal with a lot of board of directors and property managers in connection with whatever issue the HOA is confronted with. So I'm originally from Southern California, and so I have a really good understanding with regard to California law and how it relates to common interest developments and HOAs. And
so have you always operated as your own firm, or did you start off in a different size firm and broke off? How did that come about?
Well, I originally started my practice in San Diego.
Okay.
I worked for a firm there, then sort of bounced around a little bit. But recently, at the beginning of this year, I started my own firm, and it's called Moreno Law, and super excited about it. And I get to make my own decisions.
That's
and
awesome.
Sort of do the same thing that I've been doing the last 20 years, just sort of under my own umbrella.
Right, and that's kind of also what triggered me to reach out to you, because anything that I can do to support other entrepreneurs that are experts in their field and really committed to providing the best, service and knowledge and expertise. I think that's, you exemplify that. So
I appreciate that. Yeah.
I'm super excited.
And likewise.
Yeah. So, Brian, what would you say just off the bat? What are some of the myths that are out there? I know from an agent's perspective, what they are, but I'd love to hear first maybe what you believe might be the top couple of myths around HOAs.
Sure.
And then I'll happy to chime in and compare a little bit.
Okay. Yeah, I think probably the biggest myth is that when you purchase your home or your condo, I think a lot of people have the mentality that this is my house, this is my kingdom. Basically, I call the shots, and so I think that's one of the myths, because oftentimes when you buy real estate, you're buying as part of some sort of community, whether it's a residential HOA or a commercial HOA, and there's CC&Rs and other documents that set a framework for all the rules that apply. So I think initially when someone comes into a property, they may be under the false assumption that they can do whatever they want.
Right. Okay. Yeah, that's true. I would agree with that. Yeah.
So that's probably one of the biggest myths that we see. Another myth is that if they do realize that there's an HOA, they have a misconception about the extent to which the HOA is involved or not involved.
Okay.
They may view an HOA more like a landlord-tenant relationship, which in some cases it is, other times it's not. HOAs are just very unique in the way that they're set up, especially in California.
Right.
A lot of other states in the United States, the law is set up where HOAs are much more hands-off. In California, They're much more hands-on, much more involved with the policy decisions and things that the board decides on a daily basis.
And I think because California is just a one of the most litigious states, period.
Right.
Right. And I think everybody's making sure that the I's are dotted, T's are crossed, that they're following the rules that have been set up. Right.
Yeah.
Because it's always, everyone's looking for the "I got you," scenario.
Well, that's true. And probably in the last 5 to 10 years, the amount of litigation that HOAs and board members are involved with is just, exploded, I think.
Right. So that's a good segue into, I know when working with buyers sometimes and sellers, that when they hear that the HOA is in litigation, and it's like alarm bells are going off in their head, like, oh my God, should I not buy this property? Or is this going to be a problem for me to sell because, John Doe down the road here is suing the HOA.
Right.
What am I walking into?
Sure.
What's your perspective on that?
Well, litigation can take a number of different forms. I mean, sometimes the HOA may sue someone over unpaid assessments.
Okay.
There may be a violation issue that an HOA is pursuing against a homeowner. Those are not red flags at all, I don't think.
Okay.
You look at those lawsuits and you say, okay, well, the person's, they painted their house the wrong color, or they need to bring this current, or whatever it is. Those are pretty, minimal in terms of the way you would view it in the context of purchasing property.
Right.
Some of the other issues that may come up is in a condominium development, there may be a water leak that's ongoing, where there's litigation involved.
Right.
And then you look to see, well, is that an isolated type of thing, or is that a site-wide issue?
Right.
Or there may be construction defect litigation. That's much more of a red flag.
Yeah.
But you don't really see that as much anymore because the California legislature has really sort of reined that in and made it so that before you file a lawsuit, you have to go through a number of steps.
I see.
Try to resolve things with the developer first. So yeah, it's really very unique to the particular litigation that the HOA might be involved with. It's something that you want to pay attention to, but it's not necessarily a deal breaker.
Yeah, I think we just sold a house, a condo in Encino where there was a water leak happening, but it was isolated to that particular unit.
Right.
And there was litigation where, is this going to be a problem? Is not going to be a problem?
Right.
So we worked through that. But I think also in another situation where one of the other tenants was trying to sue the HOA regarding occupancy, like rental, like, hey, you're allowing too many rentals here type of situation. And also she was claiming some sort of like structural issue with her unit. And then the buyer who we were in escrow with and the lender said, hey, we need to see what the litigation is. Is there insurance that's going to cover the claim?
Right.
So those are some of the scenarios we're coming across. How should a seller or buyer look at something like that from your perspective?
Well, yeah, I mean, you want to make sure that the community that you're buying into is adequately insured. That's one of the most important things probably, is to make sure that they have a liability policy, that they have a D&O policy, that, if there is litigation, it's probably going to be, it's probably going to trigger insurance,
right?
And there will be coverage. So that's one of the things that you look for. And if a property is in escrow and the lender or the parties are somehow concerned about it, then probably what you want to do is have the HOA's legal counsel issue some sort of litigation update,
right?
That they can process through escrow,
correct?
Where everyone can see, hey, this may not be an issue, or it's not that big of a deal,
right?
And one of the things when I issue a letter, I will intentionally put whether or not insurance has been triggered, whether there's coverage provided.
Right.
Because immediately when coverage is triggered, everyone sort of lets their
and that's exactly
relaxes a little bit more.
And that's exactly what happened here. Is the attorney's letter said, "Hey, there's adequate insurance. Everybody calm down." And everybody's like, "Okay."
Right.
But walking into and you mentioned, making sure that they have adequate insurance. How does one know what is adequate, right? Like, how do you, when you receive all the HOA documents during a transaction, what should they be looking for? Where are the red flags? Because there's so much paperwork in a transaction,
right,
as you know, right? You just sign this, sign this, sign this, and you got deadlines to return it. But when it comes to HOA, what are some of the, like, hey, make sure you read this, make sure you can quickly run some numbers on, is this HOA in trouble? Are they not? Are they solvent? Right. Do they have enough reserves? Like, what are, like, make sure you look at this, make sure you look at this, make sure you look at that.
Yeah, you hit the nail right on the head. I think that's that's a critical question that you need to ask is this homeowner association solvent? Do they have adequate reserves? There's a document that's put out. It's a reserve study that where a professional looks at all the components in the HOA and compares that to their cash balance in their reserve account and says, you are this percentage funded. And so you want to look to see if, does this homeowner association have adequate funding? And the next question is, well, what's adequate funding? Well, it's difficult nowadays to get to 100%. I think if you're probably in the 50 to 70 range, you're in good shape, probably. You look at the insurance, and if you have questions, that's, what your realtor's there for.
Right.
But I think that, in the context of the pending escrow, you're going to get all of these documents, and, at some point you probably want to review everything, but if I could say, what are the important ones? It's insurance. And there's a sheet that they will give you where it'll sort of summarize exactly what the insurance policies are, who the insurance broker is, and you can contact that broker.
Right.
You can contact the property manager, and if you have questions about it, and just make sure that they have code compliant insurance coverage. And you'll also see other policies too. You'll say, do they have fidelity coverage? Do they have earthquake insurance?
Right.
So you sort of analyze all of that information comparatively to everything else that you're looking for in the property. How much you like the property. So those are probably the big ones. Okay. And you can get all of that through the normal disclosure process, where the HOA will provide these documents to the through escrow, and probably directly towards the seller's agent. Right.
So usually they're receiving like the financials, any reserve study, and then of course the minutes, right? The minutes. Now there's obviously a wide range of HOAs where you have, I think, probably condos that are and townhomes that are most involved, but then you have ones that are like North Ranch, right here in Westlake, that don't seem as involved, right? Yeah. It's like, what is it, $100 a quarter ish, something like that, right?
Exactly.
Like, what do they do?
We don't know.
Nobody knows. Right? Don't paint your house pink, I guess. You know? So that's an example of where the HOA is not really doing too much, but he wants to maintain the look or the congruency of the neighborhood. Right.
Yeah, exactly. And you can get that information from the budget. Probably you can look at what their legal budget is. You can look at the minutes is a good source to see sort of what issues are going on in that particular community. Okay. Some of the larger PUDs, planned developments in North Ranch, there's not a lot of involvement. Right. They may get involved if there's an architectural issue, or if someone wants to submit an architectural application for approval of some modification they want to make to their house. Right. But other times, if you have a community where they're involved with litigation, or they have a lot of different issues that are going on, either in terms of vendors or the city or the county. There's a whole wide range of things that could happen. You would see that in the minutes.
Okay.
And you'd see that in the legal budget.
Right.
Because that's their projection of how much time they're going to see the association's legal counsel be involved.
Gotcha. Okay. And so, like, who is your ideal client in your business? Is it the homeowner? Is it the HOA? Is it property management company? Who is the ideal client for you and your business?
Just the HOA. I only represent homeowner associations.
Okay.
Sometimes I get an email or a call about wanting me to represent the homeowner or the board member. I don't do that.
Okay.
It's a very unique practice that I have in the sense that I'm the corporate counsel for the HOA. So
Gotcha.
Anything that the HOA is involved with,
Gotcha.
it sort of keeps everything clean, so I not get into conflicts of interest with other parties.
Yeah, because I was gonna say if you're on the homeowner side, it would be a conflict to then also try and get clients that are HOAs at the same time.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, exactly.
And so what are some of the ways that you're networking then with HOAs, management and the board members to, how is council going representing the HOA in the community?
Well, it's there's several trade organizations in California where we're trying to build relationships with community managers mostly.
Gotcha.
But some of those trade organizations we're also interacting with the board members directly that are making the decisions.
Gotcha.
Normally, if we have a good relationship with the property manager, they'll throw our hat in the ring, and then we're compared against other potential legal counsel.
Gotcha.
But sometimes we have direct hits with the actual board of directors that makes the decision.
Excellent.
And then word of mouth,
Right.
Or social media. If I put out an article about
Podcast.
something like rental restrictions, if I put out an article about rental restrictions, I'll get an email or I'll get a call.
Yeah.
Say, hey, can we change our CC&Rs to do this, or can we do this?
Gotcha.
So there's a wide range of things that I try to do to generate business.
Awesome.
And but hopefully it's word of mouth.
Of
I've done a
course.
good job in the past, and so they'll.
Well,
want me to-
hopefully this podcast will help push that along as well. And I want to thank you again for coming in, taking the time. I hope all of our listeners and viewers get a little insight on what legal counsel does specifically for HOAs and some of the things you should be looking for when you're thinking of buying or selling here in the 805 that have HOA involved in the community that you might be looking to move in. And thank you again, Brian, for
Great.
coming in. All right.
I appreciate it.
Bye.
Yeah.